Okay, good afternoon. It is my great pleasure to introduce to you the group of students who worked on my Undergraduate Scholars project. We have Reet, Yan, who is joining us on Teams, Georgina, Yanhao, Kriti, who's also online, Faatima, and Grace. They did a very good job transcribing speech samples for my own project, and in the process learning something for themselves about how linguists analyze speech professionally and scientifically. But I guess you can judge this for yourself to see how much they learned by listening to their final showcase presentation. So let's welcome them and enjoy.
Hi everyone. So, does the adolescent peak really exist? Individuals' development of slang terms in the spoken corpus of American English. Okay, my name is Reet, and I'll be talking about our goals for this project. So, we started out with two goals. One was to contribute to a spoken corpus, and another was to use this corpus for our own linguistic research. So, a corpus is a collection of texts. So, a spoken corpus is a collection of texts in the form of transcripts of speech. Now, spoken corpora are very useful when studying spoken language, and we added new transcripts to this kind of corpus, extending on and improving it. So, what we studied this year was the slang forms used during the adolescence of our two speakers. So, before that, I want to talk about our corpus. So, it's called the Student-Transcribed Corpus of Spoken American English, and you can access it at spokencorpus.org. So, it's up on here. This is the homepage, and this corpus is a collection of student-made, high-quality transcripts of native speakers of American English in different settings. And there are four things that sets this corpus apart from the others. So one is that we have every single sentence token available as a piece of text, as well as an audio file. So you have this sentence token, and this right next to it.
So, but yeah, English is my first language, only language that I speak.
So every single sentence token is available in MP3 version, as well as like this text version. And all of our files have rich metadata, which means you have information on who transcribed this file, who the speaker was, the speaker's age, race, gender, everything that you need for like any sociolinguistic project. All of our transcripts are extremely high quality, and they're extremely consistent with how they've been speech tagged and lemmatized. And this website is it's free to use. All of this research is available for anyone. So the way you use this corpus is you go on search and you type any single word into the query box. So can anyone give me like any word, just any noun, adjective?
Banana.
Banana. Okay, cool. So you type in banana over here. And there's one hit in our corpus, but as many times as the word appears in our corpus, all of those hits would show up here. So you have the transcript over here, and you have the audio file.
Martin made the peanut butter and banana toast.
And all of the information you need for that specific token. So again, I highly recommend that you check this website out. It's spokencorpus.org. And now about how this corpus was built, I'll hand it off to Yanhao Li.
Thank you, Reet. Hello, I'm Yan, and I'm going to talk to you about our main task in this project is building a spoken corpus. To help enlarging the corpus, we transcribe speech samples. The whole team consists of 7 students, and each of us will transcribe 3 files, which are each 5 minutes long and 105 minutes in total. The transcription follows a straight and comprehensive manual. You may find it on the Spoken Corpus website, which ensures the solidarity of the transcript. The manual regulates all aspects of the professional transcription, including how to cut speech up into sentences, how to deal with parts such as fluencies, false starts, corrections, fillers. Even for some minor aspects, such as numbers, interjections, contraction, abbreviations or like capitalization. We would transcribe heavily according to groups in the menu. Additionally, we also contribute to the viewers to the menu during the project. Then I will talk to you about the transcription process. We use the program Audacity to add the sound files, as you can see in Figure 1. This is a program that we use to listen to sound files and divide them into sentences. While listening to the sound files in Audacity, we wrote the transcription in the text editor, which you can see in Figure 2. Now I'll pass the time to Georgina.
Thank you. So to build and expand our spoken corpus, we chose particular speakers and speech situations to transcribe. We decided to add a special data set to the corpus. This is the speech of adolescent speakers from different stages in their early life. So this is going from the ages about 14 to about 22. This allowed a study of slangy youth terms and how they change. And it also gives us the opportunity in the future to research their speech changes later in life, so during middle age and during their professional careers. The speech samples were personal vlogs taken from YouTube. And due to the time constraint we were only able to transcribe the 2 speakers. So our 2 speakers, we have speaker 1 named Sydney. She was born and raised in Eastern Pennsylvania, born in the year 2000. She's been vlogging from 2014 to today, so we've been able to do transcripts from each year from 2014 to now. She uploads content about school, DIY, fashion and lifestyle. She graduated from high school and university and is now pursuing a professional career. And our speaker 2 is very similar. Jasmine was also born and raised in the USA, but in California. She was also born in the year 2000, and she started vlogging at a similar time, about 2015, and uploaded similar content, so about student life, but also about beauty and fashion. She, at the same ages, she graduated from high school and from university, but is now a full-time content creator. We chose to have very similar speakers so we could track sort of patterns in people's speech at the same ages and see if there's a trend in use of use in slang terms. We had slightly more data for Jasmine, but it was very similar. We had 13 files for Sydney, ranging from 2014 to 2023, when they were uploaded. 13,039 word tokens, totaling to 63 minutes and 46 seconds. For Jasmine, we had 14 files, ranging from 2015 to 2023, 15,567 word tokens, totaling to 72 minutes and 32 seconds. So we tried to pick ones of a similar length. We will now describe how the speaker's characteristics and similarities relate to our chosen research question.
Okay, now in my part, I'm going to explain what we will do with the 2 speakers we have chosen and what specific research question we're going to explore. First, here's some background concept about the research questions we are going to explore about the idea, use language. As you have noted, young people often have a colloquial way of speaking, such as using internet slang terms in their daily speech, but often their style becomes more formal as they grow older. A general term to describe such a phenomenon is age grading. It can be explained as the observation that linguistic habits of an individual change in a systematic way over their lifetime. And here are 2 more professional definitions. One is from Labov, 1994. If individuals change their linguistic behavior throughout their lifetimes, but the community as a whole does not change, the pattern can be categorized as one of age grading. And the second one is from Cheshire, 1987. A change of behavior with age that repeats itself in every generation. What's more, a very specific type of age grading is the theory of the adolescent peak, which is defined as a rise and fall of useful speech features. I know it looks a little bit complex here, but we are going to explain this by graph. Here you can see this graph actually shows the two concepts that we've mentioned, that is age grading and also the adolescent peak. Here are some elements in this graph. First, the x-axis is the age of the speakers from below 10 years old to over 80 years old. And here the y-axis is the use of linguistic features. It is, this F2 is one of the phonological features here, but it's not that important in our research. So we just understand the y-axis as the frequency of using colloquial language. And here we can see the two lines representing rise and falls is the age grading process that we have mentioned. And also, here's a peak in both lines. This peak is the adolescent peak that we have mentioned. And we can see when speakers are around 80 years old, their frequency of using colloquial language will reach its peak. And then this frequency of use will decrease after this period. So now let's come back to our own research questions. Based on the corpus we have made and also the concept we have mentioned, we wanted to investigate if the colloquial expressions of our two speakers, Sydney and Jasmine, show evidence of the adolescent peak. And now let's welcome Kriti to explain the methodology and also the results of the investigation.
To test our research question, we looked at frequently used colloquial terms associated with adolescent speakers, such as
Unfortunately, our internet connection wasn't quite strong enough to understand what Kriti was saying. I'm therefore recording a voiceover to repeat the contents of her part. To investigate the research question, we looked at colloquial terms that are usually regarded as youthful, adolescent, or slangy. Those terms were the filler like, as in, it's like really stupid, as well as the words so, really, just, and actually. To illustrate the use of these terms, we can look for the string just like really. This single search query includes 3 of our 5 terms. The first example comes from our speaker Jasmine. The second example was uttered by our speaker Sydney. Both sentences will be played twice.
So here we have the like very
I'm just like really nervous that like I won't know anyone in my classes or anything like that. I'm just like really nervous that like I won't know anyone in my classes or anything like that. No, I'm just like really bad at it. No, I'm just like really bad at it.
These 2 examples sound distinctly youthful because of the use of the slang terms we identified. We collected all instances of the 5 colloquialisms in our corpus and normalized their frequency to occurrences per 1,000 words. Our expectation was that the frequency of colloquialisms should follow the theory of the adolescent peak, that is to say, their frequency should first rise and subsequently decline after a peak at around the age of 18. This line plot traces the development of colloquialisms through the life of our first speaker, Sydney. The relative frequency of the colloquialisms is shown on the y-axis. The year of the speaker's recording is on the x-axis. The 5 colors represent the 5 slang terms we investigated, and every data point stands for a transcript with the size of the point proportional to the number of relevant examples it contains. What we see is that there is no immediately visible peak. On the contrary, the use of slang terms seems to be relatively uniform throughout the speaker's life. The most common terms, like and so, show an elevated frequency around 2016, but there is also a second increase in 2021. Therefore, this data does not support the claim that the use of slang terms peaks during the adolescence of speakers of American English.
Now I would like Faatima to share the insights of the results from our
As we can see from our second speaker, Jasmine, the results are similar to what we saw with Sydney. So the graph also plots the use of the colloquialisms like so, really, just, and actually from around 2015 to 2023. And just like Sydney, there are some colloquialisms that she tends to use more than others. So, for example, it's clear that like is most popular, followed by so. And yeah, although the data, it looks a bit confusing, like Kriti said, around age 18 there is a peak with her use of some of the colloquialisms, but this just only increases again, so there's like almost a second peak at around like 2022 or 2021. And yeah, currently a lot of the colloquialisms seem to be on a downward trend, but Justin actually seemed to be on an upward trend, so it would be interesting to see, I guess, in the next few years how like these her use of colloquialisms change. Okay, so the next graph is it's a bit confusing, but it'll make sense in a bit. So we wanted to try and model the initial graph that we showed you of the adolescent peak. So what we did was we combined all of the colloquialisms together and then to form two trend lines. So the pink one is for Jasmine and the blue is for Sydney. And then each circle is a transcript. So the bigger the circle, the more colloquialisms were included in that transcript. And the trend line comes from just a linear regression model, which is just a linear approach to the relationship between the response to one or more variables. So ours is the response to how time affects the use of colloquialisms. And so then in order to model the adolescent peak, we put our data into a quadratic term. So in principle, there should just be like one inflection point. But as you can see, our data shows that time is just not significant currently because the lines are quite flat, which just means that there's no evidence for an adolescent peak. And the shading is just a confidence interval, so it's a 95% confidence interval. So basically because our two speakers, it's only like a snapshot into their lives. So if we were to be able to repeat our experiment like about 100 times, in theory, the data should be within these shadings. But as you can see, it just shows the uncertainty of it all. Because if we look at Jasmine, for example, it looks like the trend is going upward, but then there's a possibility for it also to just decrease within the confidence interval. So you would just need more time to figure that out. While the data does not seem to agree with our hypothesis, it does show that maybe how we view adolescence is changing, and Grace will explain that a bit more now.
Thank you, Faatima. So now I'm just going to discuss and conclude the results that we found from our study. So our sort of main conclusion was that we could not provide evidence of an adolescent peak for either of our two speakers. Our results did highlight the importance of individuality, so some of the speakers were more colloquial than others. So within our study, Sydney was less colloquial than Jasmine. So at the very least, what we can conclude is that not everybody will follow the population trend of the adolescent peak. Another sort of highlight from our results was that individual biographies, so the two individual speakers, Sydney and Jasmine, you need a lot more data in order to kind of research these overarching hypotheses. So each speaker is unique and their individual differences can affect and skew our data. In future, we would need a lot more speakers, as Faatima said, to generalise our findings to the wider population. So another main finding from our study was that there was no decline in the use of colloquialisms after the age of 18, and we've sort of thought of three possible reasons for this. So the first is the observer's paradox. So our two speakers are YouTubers recording themselves, and they may speak differently when they're recording themselves to how they would in everyday life. So this can affect our results. Also, perhaps the adolescent peak has shifted to a point later than 18, so we would expect the peak to be in the early 20s. This could be due to a later start of work or smaller differences between school and university. And our third reason is just perhaps the adolescent peak, the theory of the adolescent peak is wrong, and that we shouldn't be expecting to find an adolescent peak around the age of 18 at all. Another main finding from our results was there was no increase in the use of colloquialisms up to the age of 18. This could be due to a lack of data from the speakers' younger ages, as speech from minors is very hard to obtain. We thought that perhaps if we collect more data from Sydney and Jasmine in the future, we will see the adolescent peak later, as we said, in the early 20s. Or perhaps these professional YouTubers will just speak locally forever and we wouldn't expect to see any change in their speech. So now to conclude our study, so what we first did was build a corpus, and then we performed research on it with our own hypotheses. We collected new data for a spoken corpus, an existing spoken corpus. It was an additional 24,000 words, 1.7 hours, 21 files, and 2,158 sentences. As we saw before, this is a very rigorous process, transcribing speech, so this was quite a large contribution. And then we used our additional data that we added to investigate if our two speakers, Sydney and Jasmine, reduced the frequency of colloquialisms as they grew older. Our study concluded that there was no evidence of an adolescent peak for either speaker. Just like in addition, the data that we added to the spoken corpus that you saw before can be used by other researchers. It's like an open website, so they can go on and look at their own research questions and use our data. So our concluding outlook from the study was that in future we need much more data to study the development of colloquialisms. We would need lots more speakers, more data points for each speaker, and a longer coverage of time span. So sort of like a younger age to a much older age. Obviously, we said it was really hard to get speech from when they're younger. Perhaps if we were to continue collecting data for Sydney and Jasmine, we would be able to test if their colloquialisms decline after the early 20s, which would kind of see if the adolescent peak is later than around the age of 18. Our final take-home message from this study is that natural realistic corpus data is essential for the quantitative investigation of changes over the lifespan. So that concludes our study. Thank you all for your attention, and here is our page of references.